Hello, everyone. I wanted to share a little bit of my photographic life with you. A whirlwind tour, and I'm going to show you some pictures up until about the time I got to Alaska. Some pictures in Alaska. This picture here is actually from Alaska. It's me up on Eagle Summit back in probably 85 or 86. I moved here in 84 to work for the News Miner. But let's take a little look at my life in photography. In 1970, my father went to Japan, and when he came back, he brought me as a gift this Minolta 16PS camera. I'd always wanted a camera when I was a kid. Now, in 1970, I was about 11 and a half years old, almost 12, when he brought me this. And I remember very clearly he gave me the box at Dulles Airport in D.C., and we were driving across D.C. to go to our motel. But we were going to spend a night or two before we took him home. And I opened the box, and in the box there was a roll of film and some basic instructions on a simple little 16 millimeter camera. 16 millimeter, but it was still camera, not a film camera or motion picture camera. And so I got it all loaded, and I was just geeky enough to figure all that out. And once I got the camera loaded and knew how to wind the film up to number one and look around for a picture, I looked out the car as we were driving through DC, and this was the very first picture that I ever made with it. In a lot of ways, it's like pictures I still have today. It's shot from a moving car out of a car window in a fleeting instant of just seeing something and reacting. So these are some of the early pictures. There's my dad, and that's the actual Smokey the Bear, because we went to the zoo in D.C. when we picked him up, and after we got to his house, our house, he posed for a picture for me in the front yard. And there's a Saturn V rocket I'd built that's still in my living room today. It's about 5 feet tall. And back then I was real organized, so these are a list of pictures from my first roll of film. First one, Washington Monument from Cars, Smokey the Bear, Washington Zoo. Somewhere in there, Dad standing in front yard was number 11. I like number 10, bad picture of Rusty out back. I don't know if I threw it away or not, because I'd like to sort of see what the bad pictures, and then when they're bad picture of Command Module, which was the Apollo, part of the Apollo rocket, and I'm sure I got too close for that camera, and that's why it was bad, it was fuzzy. In 1973, I was in the hospital, and I'd been begging my parents for a better camera, and it turned out to be a good time, because I was in the hospital, and I got my dad to go get me this Minolta SRT 101. He went across Richmond to a company called Best Products, and for $189.95 bought me a camera. It came in a long box that had 3 boxes in it. One was the lens, a 50 millimeter 1.7 lens, the camera body, and the case. Back then I used a case on each camera. Everybody did. So I loaded the camera. He brought me some color negative film. I loaded the camera, and this was the first picture I took. It was my mom and my dad in the hospital room. And I'm in the hospital. I'm looking around for things to shoot. There's flowers in the window. There's nurses that come in and out. And we get home, and I shoot pictures of my cat and my great Aunt Rosie. And an owl out back was a little bit later. That picture was actually an okay picture. And then my dog Rusty sleeping on his pillow that I covered him up with. And today I still get a lot of cat and dog pictures from my students in basic classes. We laugh about it. On my first roll of black and white film with that camera, I took this picture. This is in Rockbridge County, Virginia, 1973. I was about 14 years old. And I just thought this was funny because it was goats grazing out by a country store that I knew very well called Evans Store. And he had this old Dr. Pepper sign, which I'd love to have today, and it said fresh cut meats because he sold those in his store. But I thought that irony, that juxtaposition of the goats and the fresh cut meat signs and that ambiguity of what it all means was a good topic for photograph. If I were standing there this moment, I would take that same picture for the same reasons today. And I love that. I mean, mostly in photography, we try to get all highfalutin, and we study Ansel Adams and all these other people, and we imitate them. It's kind of cool to realize what it is that really makes you enjoy the world with a camera. And for me, it's often irony, humor, seat of the pants. A minute before I take a picture, I don't know what is coming often. So my dad built me a little dark room in the basement, and this is really the only picture I have from that, but it was above a laundry sink. We blacked out the whole basement, and I had taped up with black electrical tape different instructions for developing film and little tips that I'd written down out of books or whatever. It seemed pretty much self-taught back then. This was what I had to learn with. It was the instruction manual for the camera, which I remember hitting this page on depth of field, these couple of pages. Very clearly, I was sitting in the car in my parents' driveway when I was looking at this and thinking, God, I don't get it. I'll come back to this, and going by it. And I think a lot of students still feel that way today. Of course, today I understand this diagram very well. These numbers I would never fool with because they're actual numbers associated with focus distances at different f-stops, at different lenses. You know, that's stuff you don't need to memorize. But this is pretty simple, that smaller the hole, longer depth of field, that sort of thing. Didn't have a lot of books around, didn't have art books, didn't know anything about art photography. All I saw were pictures in newspapers, and didn't have a lot of role models for photography. My parents got me a few books over the couple of years. They were all by Kodak, mostly intent on selling Kodak products, but also trying to teach you things you could do. And these are 3 of the actual books that I scanned to show you that I still have from those days. Here's How Book Photography, Bigger and Better Enlarging in Color and Black and White, and Creative Darkroom Techniques. So a few more pictures from those early years. There's a dog again. This is me working in black and whites, in some case doing my own darkroom work, like a picture here of my dog at the badly cut out oval. My niece on a bridge crossing the house, and another high contrast picture of the dog on my bed by my bedroom window. In 1975, I just have a picture to show you. This is what I looked like. I was in high school. I was by then a yearbook photographer for the last 3 years of high school, which gives you status, it gives you access, it gives you the things that photographers get with a camera, which are still useful even to this day. People like photography, they like cameras, and I found my niche in school by being a yearbook photographer. My hair is still as crazy now as it was then. 1981, I was at Washington Lee University, and I was sitting on a bench, and the university photographer who I knew to some degree offered me a job to help him. Now, he had a particular job he hired me for, but I ended up working for him for the next 3 years of college and really supporting him in the university photography role, which was a wonderful place to get an education. On the walls of the darkroom at Washington Lee was this picture by Patrick, which I used to look at. I remember the first time I looked at it, I went, what's that a photo of? You know, it's not a fireworks or a kiss or a touchdown or anything. It's not a real moment, and yet, God, it drew me back over and over. In fact, so much so I asked him for this print some years ago because this picture made such a difference in my life, because I would try to figure out this juxtaposition of people. Each person seems in there. It seems like a portrait of each person in here, even the little people in the background, even the hat above the mirror, and the kid in the front. Everyone here is posed almost, though they're not. It's obviously a random picture from an auction in Fairfield, Virginia. But it just attracted me so much, and eventually I learned about famous photographers like Cartier-Bresson, Robert Frank, Gary Winogrand, who made their careers on the streets, just roaming with a camera, waiting to see what would happen in front of it. And that became a major influence in my own photography. And this was the beginning of my education, which I really got in the darkroom at Washington and Lee, more than in courses. There were no photography courses at my school, so I had to figure out other ways. Patrick used a camera called a Leica, so I got myself a Leica. This is the same camera as I bought at Zachley. It's not my camera, it's one I drug off the web picture, but it's Leica M3 with a 50mm dual range Summicron lens. And that was what I did a lot of early street photography with, trying to emulate Patrick and Cartier-Bresson and trying to learn my own vocabulary. It's a great camera to have made that picture of the goats with. I mean, any camera can make any picture, but the kind of camera you use does influence the way you photograph. So we can talk more about that as we look at portfolios. So this is kind of a gag slide of me with my Leica M3 and the Queen with her Leica M3. And I laugh that, here she is making a picture of me. The Queen and I are such good Leica buddies, but she has always used Leicas as well. It's a German camera, extremely well made. They still make them. They make a digital version now. So just a few more pictures and less bio, but in 80, these are some from 81 to not 2016. I'm just going to show you a few. But here's some street work. So street work is what Bresson did. It was Patrick was doing. So you go to some event or place, or you just carry a camera all the time, and when you see something, you photograph it. I'm not going to describe each one of these in the interest of time, but I'll tell you this was in Virginia. This is the East Wing of the National Gallery of Art in D.C., as is this. The title of this picture is Escher Was Right. If you know that painting by Escher of the people constantly going upstairs. This is at a fair in Illinois, State Fair. This is in North Carolina, driving down the interstate, stopping illegally to take this picture. Here's a Natchez, Mississippi Mardi Gras parade, another one from that same parade, another one from the same day. Call this Blockhead. This is in Amsterdam. You know, like I say, I like humor, I like irony, I like things that are just odd. You know, two bicycles carrying ladders. You don't see that every day. I don't know how well this will come across on your screens, but this picture to me is all about the run in her stockings. But it's a girlfriend, a boyfriend, girlfriend photographing her boyfriend. That makes sense. By the Hollywood sign up in California there. And in a good print, you can see that run down the back of her leg, which just makes the picture to me, those little details that photography can provide. This is down in New Orleans in a park. This is very similar to my Fresh Cut Meats picture, but this was made about 25 years later in South Dakota. The fishing farm signs that every mile, half mile, that said something about catching fish, and on this, they all had fish on top of them, a cutout of a fish, but this one the fish had fallen off, and there were these horses grazing behind it. And yeah, it's like the photo god saying, "Hit the brakes, Charles. Stop here." This is in front of my parents' house. Oops, sorry, I'll go back to that. Parents' house in Virginia. It's a snapping turtle, and it had washed up in the floods, and I helped it get off of a rock that it was high-centered on, and it's making its way back across the road into the flood waters. It's on the beach in Hawaii. Call it a drive-by shooting because I kind of shot from the hip, but she just looked like she was ready to see anything. Had that video camera ready to go. Another beach. I love beaches because people are pretty unaware, pretty used to cameras, and kind of at themselves in a way. This is in Siesta Key, Florida. Kids jumping in a quarry in Jasper, Alberta. It's the world's largest buffalo. It's an actual church and a statue of a buffalo in Jamestown, South Dakota. And then this, of course, down at Kennedy Space Center, astronaut-shaped topiary. You don't see that every day. And a couple more pictures from Alaska when I first got here. This is the first picture that I liked a lot, taken down at the park. These 4 tourists and 3 little dogs, and doing everything but seeming to be involved in the Alaska they drove so far to get to. This was at Bentley Mall, as was this in the Safeway there. This is my version of American Gothic in the Alaska Land parking lot in 1985. These are pipeline supporters. This is that giant out at the pump house. And this fellow walked up, and these pictures are made without people knowing I'm shooting their picture. So he just walked up and stood there, and it was perfect for my comic intent. This is Alaska Slate-shaped open lead downtown Fairbanks off one of the bridges. This is, if you can read the sign in the background, it's called Elbow Room. So this picture is called Elbow Room, but it's, you know, downtown Fairbanks where they actually dump snow on a clean street so we can have dog races in March. Another version of that shot on film. Hard to do this digitally today in the same kind of way because these 3 negatives are printed together. I had to conceive of how that could look. It's really about a 22-dog team going by. I had to think about which direction things would connect in by the way film moves in a camera. So the first frame is on the left, third is on the right. Here's another picture from the North American. Uniquely Alaskan event, as is this. This guy was shoveled for about 1 minute and 50 seconds and then stop and watch the dog teams that were released every 2 minutes. I went by his house on 2nd Avenue. This is We Deliver by the Pizza Hut on Noise Slough in Fairbanks. And another mushing picture from the Eagle Summit from the Yukon Quest. I thought these bald eagles down in Homer shot out my car window, my first photograph ever. I thought they looked like 3 judges looking at me. This is an actual Dall sheep on a side of a cut bank up in Adigan Pass, Alaska, and a real truck going by, and a whole bunch of luck because I had 1 frame. And then finally, I'll stop here, but this is my living room a few years ago with my dog Sticky, who's died now, and a young moose out the living room window. If you guys aren't in Alaska, though, you might not get this picture, or you may think it's incredibly crazy, but it's life in Fairbanks. Okay, so that's a little bit of where I am, where I came from, and my interests, though I have a lot more in photography, but you'll see those as we go. Thanks for watching this.